If you want to continue to follow our adventure, click subscribe. So you don't miss anything, click the bell notification. Oh, Louse on the Road, subscribers and followers. I ran into a moral dilemma. Met a homeless couple who were trying very hard to get back on their feet. They have a job, they have a vehicle, and they're camping, trying to get back into a house. Before I get into their story, I've met a lot of homeless on our journey that are actually homeless because of situational circumstances. Not because they did anything wrong, illegal, or they're hooked on a drug. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for them. I'm not going to say that they should have done this or they could do this. I'm not going to say any of that because I don't know their life. But I've met several. I met a young couple in West Virginia. They were staying at Hawk Campground. And they had a fairly nice truck. It was pretty new. I would say it was within 5 years old. Every day he would get up and go to work. Every day. Come back to the campground at night. They would leave on the weekends. They would leave their tent. They were sleeping in a tent. They would leave their tent over the weekend, but then they'd come back Monday morning or Sunday night, go to work Monday morning, come back every night. As a matter of fact, one night, it wasn't even 10 o'clock. It wasn't past curfew, and we were watching TV. I had my little speaker, and I didn't think it was that loud. And we were in the pop-up camper, of course, at the time. And he blared his horn, and I thought, wow, maybe that was, an indication for me. It was, I don't know, 9:30. But it probably was too loud, and he just needed to get some sleep so he could go to work. So, I mean, I commend him. I met a gentleman in Florida. He had a very large tent and, 3 Dachshunds, little hot dog dogs. They were very cute. One of them fetched very well. He loved to fetch ball. His whole dream was to get back to California. That was his home state. He'd lived in Florida most of his adult life, but he wanted to get back to California before he died. He admitted that he was no longer able to live in a house financially, so he was living in this tent. It was a big tent, but he had to take a bath in a river. I mean, what is it? The temperature was 40 degrees, and he's in there taking a bath in if he was still doing that during the summer, then he's got the alligators to deal with. So you start to try to understand what the story is. Met another guy down in Florida, and I've talked about him a lot. He used to bounce around from campground to campground to campground. He tries to follow the law and the rules, and he moves every 2 weeks like he was supposed to. The next time I saw him, he got in a job as a campsite host at a free campsite. He didn't get any money out of it, but he didn't have to move, which was saving him a ton of money. So I would even say there he was trying to improve his situation. It wasn't a great leap, but at least he was saving money on having to move around and worrying about finding the next campground, worrying about not having to break rules. So he's improving the situation. Okay, to come back to the couple that we just met. Every morning they get up about 6 o'clock. And by 7 o'clock, they're leaving to go to work. They have a temp job. It's not going to be a long-term job. But when they got here, the first question, and it actually put up my radar, like, uh-oh, why are they asking these questions? The first question they asked us was, do the cops and rangers come down here very often? I was like, oh, I don't know. We've been here a day. So we were kind of on guard. And I think rightfully so. I mean, that's not a question you typically want to ask somebody. The first question, I should say, that you want to ask somebody without any context behind that statement. If they just said, how often does the rangers come down? What's the stay limit? I like to talk to the ranger. Those kind of things. But it wasn't. It was just, how often do they come down? Well, are you hiding from the law? I mean, come on. Really? Well, the next day, we start to understand their story a little bit better. Carolyn and I started heading out for a walk, and they said, how long's the stay limit? And I said, well, we think it's 2 weeks. Well, I mean, it's on the conservation website. We'll have to look, but I think it's 2 weeks. It's not in the pamphlet, which is right there. It says you can camp here, but it's not in the pamphlet. I mean, it was just idle chatter. I didn't have the answer for them. We don't intend to stay 2 weeks, so we didn't really look into it. We looked at the pamphlet and realized we could camp here, and so that's what we did. Well, over time, over the next day or so, we learned that, they do have a temp job. That's where they're going every morning. They come back about 5 o'clock. They have dinner, and by 9 o'clock they're in their van sleeping. Their problem is if they have to move in 2 weeks, here's where my moral dilemma comes in at. If they have to move in 2 weeks, they're going to use up a lot more gas trying to get to work, which is going to take away from them being able to get back into their house. On one hand, I want to say, well, yeah, you know, the ranger isn't going to catch you because they only come down while you're at work, so that you probably could stay here indefinitely. But the other part of me who says I have to follow the rules, it's very important we follow the rules because they're going to close these places down. No, they don't need to be here. They don't need to be here past 2 weeks. So what do? If they shut this place down because people are staying here longer than the 2 weeks, then this couple won't even get the 2 weeks to stay down here. They're going to be in some serious trouble. So what do? I just couldn't imagine how to answer this question in my own head. So what I did is I asked him, well, how far are you willing to drive to go to your job? How far is your job? And he said, well, I could drive probably 20 miles, but I don't know of any place that close. He says, the next place I know is about 80 miles away. Oh, okay. Well, that kind of helped me out. Well, they don't have internet or cell phones or anything. So what I did was I got on the line and I started looking up different areas within that area. I mean, I'm from this area, so I already knew a lot of them. All I had to do was figure out if they could camp there or not. So I found about 5 spots that they could stay at within a 20-mile radius. I let them know, gave them directions, the whole thing. So I think that's what we have to do. We still have to enforce the rules as a society. At the same time, trying to give somebody a hand up. I think if we just would say, okay, they could stay here, and eventually they're going to close the place down because more and more homeless people are just going to start making residence here. They're going to shut it down, and so we're not even giving them a hand up. We're basically just going to, you know, well, do the best you can until they shut it down. So, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Click like if you like the video, and happy trails.